Tonight, the Prime Minister in Scotland, Rishi Sunak, warns the UK government is still considering blocking Holyrood's gender recognition reform bill.
It's entirely reasonable that the UK government considers the impact on the entire UK of laws that are passed in Scotland.
Also making the headlines, the new Freeport on the 4th, which could create thousands of jobs in renewable energy. Another winter, another road closure. We'd at the rest and be thankful to see how the latest landslip warning is affecting the surrounding community.
And in sport, as the transfer activity hots up, Rangers boss Michael Beale says the club are closing in on their first January signing.
I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. On his first trip to Scotland as Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak is rejecting calls to increase the pay offer to NHS staff to avoid further strike action. He's also warning that the UK government is still considering blocking the Scottish Parliament's gender recognition reform bill.
And he formally announced 2 new Freeports on the Cromarty and 4th, which he says could create thousands of new jobs. Our political editor Colin Mackay has been following the Prime Minister's Highland tour and joins us now. So Colin, potentially some breaking news on the NHS pay dispute in Scotland tonight. What can you tell us?
There is a very real prospect of a breakthrough in the NHS pay dispute in Scotland. It could come as early as tonight, it could even come within the next hour or so. The Scottish Government made a proposal yesterday, and that's being considered right now by the Royal College of Nursing, the GMB Union and the Royal College of Midwives. It could pause plans for strike action in Scotland while the unions and their members consider the new deal. They may even want to put it out to another ballot of their members. What it would mean would be a deal for next year, but it would also cover part of this year, and it could be done in time for the start of the new financial year on the 1st of April. Now, the deal on offer in Scotland to NHS staff is already better than the rest of the UK, but it has been overwhelmingly rejected by those 3 unions. The First Minister met the Prime Minister here in Inverness last night, and she asked for more cash for NHS staff, but didn't seem to get very far with that. And I asked the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, about that earlier when I spoke to him just up the coast in Invergordon.
We've accepted already the recommendations of the independent pay review bodies, and that's a process that's been long established where an independent body makes recommendations to the government on what are appropriate pay settlements. And actually what we've said to the unions is we want to talk about that process so they can see where we're coming from, they can understand. But as I say,
you're going no further than that, clearly.
Again, those talks are ongoing.
You're clearly trying to have a more respectful relationship with the First Minister than your predecessors did. Will you respect the Scottish Parliament's decision to change the gender recognition reform bill that they're proposing?
So there's been a lot of talk about this, and I'll just be really clear about our position. The process that I'm talking about is one that's been established for years, if not decades. It's entirely standard.
It's not been used.
And it's entirely reasonable that the UK government considers the impact on the entire UK of laws that are passed in Scotland. As I said, it's a long-standing established practice. We're going through that process. We'll receive the advice and then decide on the next steps.
But it'd be controversial if you did it.
Again, we're talking about hypotheticals. We're jumping ahead of ourselves. All I'm saying at the moment
is... Not very far. It's just Tuesday when you're going to make the announcement.
We're going through the process. We're receiving the advice. It's something that has been in place for years, if not decades, and it's right that we go through that process.
Now, when you were here at the hustings in Scotland, at the hustings during the leadership contest, you said the prospect of another independence referendum during a cost of living crisis would be barmy. So you're not going to give the powers to the Scottish Parliament. The First Minister says that means she's going to turn the next general election into a de facto referendum. If you're still Prime Minister after that election, would you accept the result of that de facto referendum?
I tell you what I'm focused on is delivering for the people in Scotland. Today's announcement...
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you about the possibility of a de facto referendum at the next general election, which is what the First Minister is proposing. You spoke to her about it last night. Would you accept the outcome of that?
We didn't talk about the next general election. What we did talk about, though, is the things that we can do to deliver for people here in Scotland by working constructively together. And today's announcement of 2 new Freeports is a great
but you're
example
completely ignoring my question, which is about the possibility of the next general election being a de facto referendum. Would you accept the the outcome of that?
What I'm focused on...
I know, but that's not what I'm asking you, what you're focused on. I'm asking you to focus on this, because there's a lot of people in Scotland who are very interested in this. Would you accept the outcome of a de facto referendum?
Do you know what? I was out all of yesterday evening, I've been out all of today, and what people are talking to me about is what we can do to actually make their lives better in the here and now.
So you're just not going to talk about what they're talking about? You're just going to ignore my question about... You're just going to ignore my question about Scotland's constitutional future? Is that what you're doing?
No, I think when it comes to a general election, people will make up their own minds on what they want to vote on, right? So it's not really for me to talk about that. What I can talk about...
because that's what I'm asking you about. It sounds like you're ignoring the mandate at the Scottish Parliament, you're ignoring a mandate potentially at a Westminster election. Are you ignoring democracy?
No, absolutely not. What we are doing is delivering for people here in Scotland. And now obviously, the Scottish Government tried to put forward something which the Supreme Court said was not appropriate. Well, I respect the decision of the Supreme Court. And in the here and now, I think what people in Scotland want is for us to make a difference to their lives. And we want to create jobs and opportunities.
But they have no democratic right to express their own opinion on Scotland's future.
As I said, the Supreme Court has made its decision. We respect the decision of the
Scottish
Supreme
people
Court.
can.
And actually, what we are doing is delivering for the Scottish people with initiatives like the 2 Freeports here today that we're announcing, which will bring jobs, investment and opportunity to their regions in Scotland. It's a very positive example of what we're going to try and do, and that's what I'm set on delivering.
Prime Minister, thanks for joining us on STV News. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
The team behind the 4th Green Freeport say it could bring up to 50,000 jobs to the central belt of Scotland. They only found out for sure the bid had been successful when the Prime Minister made his announcement this morning.
The aim is to boost the green economy through tax breaks, and there's a plan to attract employment in renewables manufacturing to Leith. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
At Leith Docks, they've already started on Scotland's biggest renewable energy hub. This is the groundwork they hope will pave the way for wind turbine parts to be made here, with all the potential employment that brings.
There are many manufacturers who are starting to show interest in our facilities, and we'll continue to work with them through the Green Freeport to deliver these jobs.
Over the next year, a vast new outer berth will be constructed here, giving Leith the capability to take the much larger wind farm construction vessels.
And that makes it easier for the parts to be taken offshore. The area covered by the Freeport is across the Forth estuary, here at Leith, Burnt Island, Rosyth, Edinburgh Airport and Ineos at Grangemouth, where there's potential to develop sustainable fuels and fire up the local economy.
For the whole area, let's say the BP or Ineos now, it's a lifesaver really.
It totally needs it. I mean, this used to be a thriving town.
The more money it brings in, the more money it's going to provide for everybody else. And hopefully we're desperately needing jobs as well around here.
The status of the 4th bid and another in the Cromarty Firth was confirmed during that visit of the Prime Minister to the Highlands. It means Glasgow and Aberdeen miss out.
What it does is it allows those areas of Scotland, Cromarty and the Forth, to be able to project themselves on the world stage as being real centres of the renewable industry sectors of the future, and that's important to secure investment. Otherwise might have gone to south of the border or to other ports internationally.
But not everyone's convinced.
There's nothing green about these freeports. There's a lot of green rhetoric going on, a lot of green words being used, but we've seen from the UK's history with freeports and international evidence that they regularly cause environmental damage, they drive down workers' pay and standards, and they don't create the jobs that are promised.
The Freeport plan looks years into the future, but its backers say we should see the first tangible signs of progress here within months. Gordon Cree, STV News, at the Port of Leith.
Other stories, and 2 former employees at an Ayrshire school have been jailed for a second time for abusing pupils. 73-year-old Matthew George and 69-year-old John Muldoon have been found guilty of a total of 55 charges of physical and sexual abuse at Kenilworth Residential School between 1975 and 2004. They've been jailed for a total of 28 years.
The number of coronavirus cases in Scotland has increased again, having hit the highest level since last summer. 1 in 25 people had the virus in the week ending December the 31st.
The world's largest commercial aircraft will once again operate flights out of Glasgow Airport. Emirates has announced the Airbus A380 will fly daily to Dubai from the 26th of March. The aircraft was last in service in September 2019.
People with lung conditions are being urged to take extra care as a study suggests 4 out of 10 respiratory deaths, including asthma and COPD, happen between December and March. Charity bosses say Scots are more than twice as likely to die from an asthma attack in winter than summer.
We've always known that the winter is a more difficult time, we get more exacerbations, but actually look at the raw figures and just see how vulnerable people are during this time. It's pretty scary.
Woodlands, which help prevent flooding, are worth nearly £100 million to Scotland, researchers have found. They say the sponge effect of trees has become even more important because of wetter winters and more intense summer rainfall.
Now, the road is a lifeline linking Argyll and the Highlands, but the Rest and Be Thankful has been closed for most of this week amid fears of another landslip.
Heavy rain has saturated the hill next to the A83. People living in the area say repeated closures are having a huge impact on businesses and livelihoods, as Polly Bartlett reports.
Traffic diverted from one of Scotland's best-known routes, the Rest and Be Thankful, known for its stunning landscape, world-famous viewpoint, and for scenes like this.
Well, I'm just trying to travel from Glasgow to Inverary for some interviews, and the Rest to Be Thankful is closed again. So I'm now in a queue to join the convoy down the diversion route, which goes along the old military road. And this is going to add anything from half an hour to an hour onto my journey.
And I wasn't alone. The queues quickly built up. NHS vehicles, butchers and delivery vans all caught up in the delays.
This is the second time I've done it today. I've lost track, and it's every time we're coming up to deliver. Maybe we're losing about 20 minutes a day, just sitting waiting. When you add it up over the course of the year, it's a lot.
The road has been closed for over a week now, but the problems have been causing misery for years. The diversion I got caught up in makes use of the single-track old military road, which isn't that suitable for heavy goods vehicles. And if that's shut, drivers are required to take an 80-kilometre detour. Well, I'm now through the convoy and only 30 minutes late for my first interview, but the problems caused by the road don't end here. There are businesses all across Argyll impacted by the repeated closures. This family-run brewery, built in an old sheep shed near Inverary, exports beer across the country. Owner Jamie Delap is counting the cost of the closures and chaos.
Our drivers are taking beer right the way as far as Newcastle and Cumbria. So if you're adding that extra sort of 20 minutes to an hour onto the journey, depending on what the state of the road is there, and that's going out and coming back, that's making an already long day a very long day indeed. But we had a long-standing driver, Archie, who'd worked for us for many years, who actually left at the end of last year because he was just fed up with the extra drive. You know, it saps the lifeblood out of what's going on when things are already tough for everybody.
Along the road at Lochfine's world-renowned oyster bar, checking on the status of the Rest and Be Thankful has become part of the daily routine.
We have to be in Glasgow at a certain time. We have a deadline where our stuff has to get there in time to make its onward connections to different airports and to different parts of the country. On a day like today, the weather's bad, so we're on the military road today. That means we've got to get him out 30 to 40 minutes earlier, which puts more pressure onto the rest of the factory.
More pressure on businesses when they're already struggling with rising costs.
Back in 2020, we had a huge landslip in August and September, and our sales here were devastated. That's our peak trading period, and we can't have it interrupted continually.
These issues have been rumbling on for years now. What ideally do you think needs to be done?
Well, we need a longer-term fix. And when you look at the history of Scotland, when you look at the bridges, the shipbuilding in the past, the canal system that we built, lagging locks, the Falkirk Wheel, there's so many things that we put right and done so well. And why can't we get our road fixed? Why are we still using our road 275 years after it was designed and built? It's not on, really.
In this picturesque but hugely frustrated corner of Argyll, a long-term fix is still some distance away. Diversions, delays and disruption remain the only permanent fixture on the A83.
So, Polly, a frustrating day out then.
It was, John. I mean, my delay wasn't huge, but I can't imagine how frustrating it would be if you're caught in that day in, day out, especially when millions of pounds have been spent on temporary fixes.
So there clearly needs to be a solution. What are the Scottish Government saying?
Well, today they said to me that they're working at pace on a long-term solution, and we'll find out what that looks like by the spring.
Polly, thank you. A community project to restore a 17th century mansion where Bonnie Prince Charlie once slept has received a significant funding boost. Bannockburn House was saved from possible demolition in 2017 when it was bought by a trust of local residents and volunteers. Stirling Council has now allocated £300,000 which will help improve road access to the historic site. Susan Ripple reports.
They're here almost every day. Volunteers passionate about bringing this historic mansion back to life. It'll take about a decade to restore Bannockburn House, and it'll cost millions. But the team is a step closer after receiving £300,000 from the local council.
It's just amazing. As you can imagine, the minute we got the word, it was just celebration, 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 because it will make a massive, massive difference.
The house dates back to the 1670s and has been owned by a number of prominent families. Its most famous resident was Bonnie Prince Charlie.
January itself is a big month in the house's history because this was the month that Bonnie Prince Charlie actually was in residence here, orchestrated the Siege of Stirling and also the Battle of Falkirk from this very house, maybe even from this very room. It is a Grade A listed, so we have to be very careful how things are handled. But the history of the house is so fascinating. Every day is a school day. We're constantly finding out new information.
Another incredible gem is behind this door. This is a walk-in safe which dates back to the 1880s, but the team don't have a key, so they've got no idea what's inside. Another feature which they hope will entice visitors is this room, which was significantly damaged by a fire in the 1970s. A lot of work has also been done on the grounds.
Sadly, we don't have any plans that show us what the garden was like in the past. We had a volunteer who just died recently, Bill Evans, and he had worked here in 1956 for 2 years. And he was a great help because he could remember a lot of the paths and a lot of what was growing. He'd tell us even the variety of tomato or lettuce that was growing. So Bill's been really crucial to help us reconstruct the gardens.
The criteria of the funding is about projects which are locally led. They can demonstrate that there's community development, that there's regeneration and economic growth. And Bannockburn House Trust demonstrated that they could deliver in all of those aspects. It's a great project that's bringing back into use a key local historic asset.
There's still a long way to go in this restoration, but the team is determined and in it for the long haul. Susan Ripple, STV News, Bannockburn.
Another story in the West, and more than 1,000 Ukrainian refugees living on a docked cruise ship in Glasgow are to be moved off the boat in the coming weeks. The Scottish Government has confirmed the contract to use the MS Ambition will end at the end of March. Options for longer-term accommodation are now being looked at using new and existing volunteer hosts. Sean will have tonight's weather forecast later.
Well, you don't need me to tell you we've had some very, very wet weather recently, and this is what we've had so far in January for Tiree. That is about 3/4 of a month's worth of rain in just the first 2 weeks of the month. And there's a bit more rain to come over the weekend, but big changes as we head into next week. I'll bring you the forecast later on.
Time for sport now.
Here's Rahman and a big weekend of Cup semi-finals.
Sure is, John. 2 games at Hampden as clubs chase the first silverware of the season.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
But first, Michael Beale says Rangers are moving closer to making their first January signing as he once again spoke of his admiration of Norwich midfielder Todd Cantwell. As for the Cup semis, Celtic boss Ange Postecoglou says they'll use the hurt of losing in last year's Scottish Cup semi-final to Rangers in what was a last visit to Hampden to drive the team to a win over Kilmarnock in the League Cup tomorrow. Here's Ronnie Charters.
He's been busy on the training ground and busy trying to secure new signings. Today, Michael Beale revealed the club are making inroads on transfer targets.
There's been meetings going on.
I've not had much time off, if that makes sense, because I've been busy with that along with Ross and everybody else, but I'm pleased with where things are. It's positive. These things are never as fast as the fans want. The window opens and they want the guy there the moment the window opens. It doesn't always work like that, but I'm positive.
Norwich's Todd Cantwell has been heavily linked with a move to Ibrox. Canaries boss David Wagner admitted that this morning the 24-year-old doesn't have a future at Carrow Road.
Yeah, he's a player of a lot of ability and there'll be a lot of interest in him. Like, he's a player that I like a lot, I said last week, but out of respect I can't really say much more than that. I think you're not far off the track for what yous are all insinuating.
Meanwhile, holders Celtic are preparing to continue the defence of the trophy against Kilmarnock. Ange Postecoglou is hoping last season's Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to Rangers will act as motivation for his players.
Losing in a semi-final is not just getting out of a cup competition. You know, you're a step away from a final, which is a big occasion. So maybe having no experience is better because, you know, you have less fear and you haven't felt that pain. But, you know, guys who've felt the pain, and we certainly did in the semi-final of the FA Cup last year, you know what that feels like. You don't want to feel that again.
Greg Taylor remains on the sideline for Celtic ahead of tomorrow's cup clash. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
Kilmarnock manager Derek McInnes is urging his players not to let the occasion get the better of them when they walk out at the National Stadium tomorrow. Kelly will have a number of players who will play at Hampden for the first time when they face Celtic.
There were a lot of players who haven't even visited Hampden, a lot of young and old, as you say, haven't experienced that. There'll be 40,000 probably Celtic fans there. It'll feel like an away game. We've got a big support going ourselves, and it's 11 v 11. As good as they are, we've got to believe we've got a performance in us, and just I don't want us to feel cowed. I don't want us to feel inferior in any way, shape or form. We're in a semi-final and we've earned it the same way Celtic have.
So the League Cup semi-finals take place at Hampden this weekend. The Premiership fixtures get underway tonight as Hearts take on St Mirren at Tynecastle, and Jamie Borthwick is there for us. Jamie.
Yes, Rahman, it's only 6 days since these two teams last met, so let's cast our minds back to Saturday when they played out a 1-1 draw in Paisley. It was the hosts that took the lead early on through a free kick by Ryan Strain, but after half-time, Robert Snodgrass hitting his first goal in maroon to secure a share of the spoils. Hearts are looking to go 6 points clear in third place today, but St Mirren have been on a good run of form and they're determined to keep up that.
I think it's a positive, to be honest with you, and I think that obviously we saw them last week. We know what we need to do. You know, it's both teams play a kind of similar system, so it's up to us to try and break them down a bit better than we did in the first half. Players have delivered just about every game we played this season. You know, we can't look too far ahead and say we're going to do X, Y, Z. Just winning Friday night.
I think a draw away from home or a draw at Tynecastle is a good result, but we certainly won't be setting up to draw the game. We want to win the game. If we can turn a couple of those draws into wins, then that would be fantastic. But we did set out after the break to make sure we tried to rectify our way form. We've done that.
Well, there's a buzz around Gorgie as a result of the transfer business Hearts have been doing this week, and they're still awaiting international clearances to be confirmed for Garang Kwal, but I can tell you that he is in the stadium tonight. Yutaro Oda and James Hill are also available for selection. For St Mirren, they're without 3 suspended players, including midfielder Ethan Errahon, and there's late fitness tests for Declan Gallagher and Ryan Strain. It's Friday night lights here in the capital. The game gets underway at 7:45.
Thanks, Jamie. Stevie Hamill is confident he can turn Motherwell's fortunes around following a poor run of results, which leaves them sitting 10th in the Premiership. The Steelmen, whose latest signing, Ollie Crankshot, goes straight into the squad for the visit of Ross County tomorrow, have lost 4 out of the last 7 games. The last win was in October.
It's been difficult. I mean, I know the smile isn't on my face as much as it usually would be in normal times, but you know, it's because I want to do well, it's because I want to win, and obviously, especially last week, that didn't happen. I think when they took the job, when we came into the job, it was understood it was a difficult task to take over and come into, but I'm confident in myself and the staff here are doing well and being as good as we can possibly be.
And within the last few minutes, Motherwell have announced the signing of Mikel Mandron on loan from Gillingham. That is all sport for me tonight, folks. Have a great weekend.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Sean has the weekend weather forecast.
Get set for a wet spell. TUI sponsors STV weather.
So quite a big change in our weather on the way in the next couple of days. For the time being, though, a lot of dry weather out there after the shout-out breaks of rain we had earlier on this afternoon. But it's not going to last long. We've got more rain on the way later on tonight. And those temperatures should start to rise from the west as that rain comes in. Quite a bit of snow to come, I expect, over the tops of the Grampians through tonight, with the colder air starting to move in across northern parts. Now, I've had lots of people complaining over the last couple of days at me, stop the wind, stop the rain. Unfortunately, tomorrow, I'm afraid you're probably going to be moaning once again, because it's not looking so good out there. There will be scattered showers to start with, so the morning probably the best point in the day, but the weather going downhill during the afternoon. Heavy rain coming in, there'll be snow over higher ground, and once again, rather like the last couple of days, we get those stronger winds developing around western parts, and I've got that shaded out once again for you. We're about 50-60 mile per hour winds possible in the same sort of areas as the other day around Isla. 50-60 mile per hour gusts possible here again, Machrihanish and Campbelltown, southern parts of Arran, the Girvan coast, Ballantrae and down towards Stranraer, those stronger gusts. So wet, windy for many of us, but especially so the further west you are during tomorrow afternoon. It's not looking so great. Then on Sunday, we've got lots of scattered showers around. Again, some heavy. There'll be wintry over higher ground, but sunnier on Monday, but feeling a lot colder. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV weather.
And finally tonight, a Scot has completed an epic 700-mile journey to the South Pole. Ben Webber pulled his kit on a sled through the Antarctic to raise money for cancer research after losing his mother to the disease.
He says he's delighted but tired in what's been an adventure through minus 30 temperatures. Haley Bomber contacted him via satellite phone today.
Oh, it's absolute elation. I'm kind of pinching myself that I'm actually here at the pole.
He's trekked for 58 days, solo in the Antarctic, in minus 30 temperatures, pulling his belongings in a sled. But in the early hours of this morning, Ben Webber completed his epic journey to the South Pole. So how tough was it?
Oh, it's basically every day is an intense experience. Even the rest days are intense. You get these whiteouts where you feel like you're floating in space. And there's all these strange snow formations which you can't see because there's no shadows.
He trained for months around Carbridge before heading out on his expedition, all to raise money for cancer research after losing his mum Marion to the disease 4 years ago.
Of course she would have been worried. I know she would have been so happy for me to have managed to complete this. If I can make any difference in any way at all, I'll be happy, because, if there's any way to help diagnose people and treat cancer.
The youngest of 7 children, Ben's family say he's always been adventurous.
He's only a couple of years old. We had a stone wall in the garden. It's about 6 foot. And Ben kept wanting to climb up this 6 foot wall, which, you turn your back on him for 2 seconds and he's scaling this wall. It's been an emotional roller coaster, I guess, watching his and keeping up to date with his daily updates. And now I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I can't believe he's there. Seeing the picture this morning was, wow, look at Ben, he's done it.
A journey of a lifetime. Ben will take some time off to rest, but says he still has his eyes set on the next adventure.
I'm learning to sail, so definitely sailing, Antarctica. There's some polar ambitions there as well, so plans are definitely afoot.
Haley Bomber, STV News.
Wow, what a feat. That's all from us tonight. Bye-bye.
Good night.